Several people remain missing following the Hamas attack in Israel, and that includes Canadian peace activist Vivian Silver. She is believed to have taken hostage, being taken captive, but family and friends continue to hope that she will hear positive news about their loved one soon. Lynne Mitchell, who's a dear friend of Silver, is joining us live now in studio this morning to talk about Vivian, her legacy, and the fact that she's still missing. Lynne, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having me.
How are you doing, first off? I know I really can't imagine for now over 2 weeks not knowing exactly what's happened with Vivian and just not having any information on her.
It's been very difficult for the family and for all of us who care about her. And she has many friends all over the world. But particularly difficult for her family. But in the words of her sister, we're doing the best we can. And in the words of her brother, we remain optimistic that she is alive and unharmed and that we'll be able to see her soon.
Hopefully. And I know that there was a recent update. Vivian isn't considered missing at this point. There has been a change in status. Can you tell us about that?
There's a lot of confusion around it. You know, it's still such an active, confusing situation. But my understanding as of yesterday is that she is classified now as having been abducted and believed to be now in Gaza.
All right.
This is according to the family's latest notification.
All right. And her family, you know, her son and his family live near Tel Aviv as well. And her son was one of the last people to speak with her as the Hamas terrorists were in her kibbutz. At this point, when was the last time that you were able to speak with her and you know, touch base with her? I know right now that's probably something you're reflecting on quite a bit.
Well, just Vivian has two sons, two beautiful sons and their families, both of which are now in Israel. And in terms of my communications with Vivian, there have been several going back to May, and I'll bring you up to date to my latest one. In May, my husband and I were in Israel, and every time we go to Israel, which is fairly frequently, we always visit with Vivian, as she does if it works out for her when she's in North America. And we were scheduled to visit with her in Be'eri and stay with her on the kibbutz. And at that time in May, Be'eri was under a rocket attack from Gaza, so Vivian was evacuated from the kibbutz. So we didn't know whether we'd be able to visit with her, but she was able to go back on the day before we were scheduled to arrive. So we were able to spend 3 days with her on Be'eri. We toured around the Negev, visited the dining room, just had a wonderful time on Be'eri. And then in July, Vivian and her family, her two sons, grandson, daughter-in-law, stayed with us for a week in Toronto. They had a family celebration. So we had quite a family reunion on our side and her side with the kids. And she visited Niagara-on-the-Lake with her sister, went on a bike tour. It was just a wonderful time to be together, to get caught up on what's been going on in her life. And then a week before the October 7th, I spoke with her on the phone, just sort of a yada conversation, you know. How are you? What are you doing for the weekend? What are your plans, etc. So that was just, you know, a very, you know, a conversation, not knowing what the future would hold for you, obviously. And then on October 7th, that Saturday morning, I was up around 5, and the first thing I always do is check what's going on in the world. You know, it's an addiction. And I saw what was going on in the Negev in the south. So I WhatsApped Vivian. This was around 5 o'clock our time, which would have been noon Israeli time, and there was no answer. And I knew that I mean, she always responded. So I contacted her son, and he said that they had lost contact with her as of 11 o'clock Israel time, local time, and that he had been on the phone with her as she was trying to hide in the safe room. And then she heard gunfire and voices outside, and the conversation that he had with her. I mean, they were joking, and then as it got more serious, she said, "Okay, I love you." And he responded, and nobody's heard from her since.
It's horrific on either side, with her son being on the phone with her in those last moments before where she is now. And then, of course, with you having that conversation, that it really puts into perspective. You have a conversation that you think is a little insignificant one, and it really, truly is something you reflect on after. I want to ask you as well, last question here, because we're unfortunately running out of time, but Vivian's legacy.
Yes.
It is something that has been of peace and calling for peace for years. Can you just quickly describe what she did throughout her life that would have been calling for peace on both sides for decades?
Well, Vivian is truly a person who dedicated everything she did in terms of her work and the way she lived her life to a vision of peace and a shared society between Arabs and Israelis. I could talk for a very long time about it, but she really was a nonviolent person and believed that peace was the way to go and bring about the vision of a shared society. She didn't believe that war would bring about peace. She was active in, just 3 days before she was abducted, she was on a march in Jerusalem with Women Wage Peace, which was a group of women from all walks of society, Arab, Israeli, Muslim, Jew, Christian, whoever believed in the vision of peace in that part of the world was marching. That was just 3 days before she was abducted, and her apartment was incinerated and the kibbutz was destroyed and she was abducted. The other things that, in terms of just the simple things in her life where she tried to bring about a shared vision for how she wanted to live in Israel. She drove cancer patients from Gaza to their treatments in Jerusalem, and when she first came to Be'eri, she was in charge of construction, and there were workers from Gaza who came to work on the construction and on the kibbutz. And in one of the cycles of violence, when the border was closed, Vivian made sure, we remember this very distinctly, that whatever wages were outstanding to those people who had worked on the kibbutz, she personally drove to the border and made sure they received them. And on one of our last visits to the kibbutz, there was, on a Friday afternoon, there was an area in the kibbutz where people from the region and the kibbutz made contact with people from Gaza who wanted what they wanted, which was to live in peace. And that happened on Friday afternoons, and that was something that Vivian participated in as well.
Well, we hope that we hear good news about Vivian very soon to give ease to your mind and to the minds of her family and friends everywhere around the world. Lynne, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you.